So hello everyone and welcome to ATC Events Hangout. Thanks for watching. My name is BK and I'm the Digital Marketing and Communications Coordinator here at ATC Events. So I'm really trying to keep a very straight face here right now so I don't appear too nervous. And then hopefully our guest here today will not read too much into my facial gestures. Well, the reason why I'm saying this is because our guest today is actually a body language specialist. His name is Anthony Awerbuch, and he's the chief consultant for body language on purpose. So how are you today, Anthony?
Fantastic. How are you, BK?
I'm good. Could you tell us a little bit more about what you do and who do you work closely with?
Yeah. On the one hand, I'm working really with the recruiter to be able to assess and evaluate their candidates better. And with the candidate to prepare him so that he can master and manage his own body language in a more purposeful way.
Sounds really, really fascinating. I mean, I'm pretty sure you met a lot of recruiters throughout your career as a body language coach. Could you share some interesting recruiter stories?
Let me tell you that in my own hiring experience as a hiring manager, right, before even doing this, what I noticed was the candidate always had his words very well prepared. Whether he was with a career coach or his recruiter gave him some coaching, or he just did some online research, he understood in most cases, almost all of the candidates, even the lower level candidates, for clerical or beginner roles, they were very aware of the words that they were using. They clearly selected their words, but I often saw contradictions. So while a guy, for example, I once sat in an interview with somebody else, with a colleague, while she was doing the interview, and I just observed, and every time he answered her question, there was a little look of contempt on his face, right? So, and contempt is really easy to identify. It's really just the corner of one side of our lip going up. So it's an asymmetrical thing. And because it's asymmetrical and just really one muscle moving, it's very easy to pick up. So I saw this type of thing. I saw that there was not a congruence. So yes, we are very focused on our words, but if it's not authentic, if what we're saying isn't really us, then it comes through in what we call leakage, right? So an aspect of our body language will leak out that will show an authentic emotion. So recruiters that I speak to, I think that they're on the same page, really, that there's a lot of focus on the words. Candidates try to get the edge in terms of what they put on their resume and what they say.
I just sat through a couple of interviews recently and I was looking at the candidate's CV and they all look really, really perfect. And I mean, in a way, don't you kind of expect it somewhat? Because candidates always tend to, prepare themselves really well and they pad up their CVs to make themselves look and sound better. So, I mean, assuming that there is a bit of creative writing involved and the employer feels that the candidate is worth checking out and invites him or her further in for a chat. So the question is, well, what are some of the cues and signals that an employer should be looking out for to help him or her make the right hiring decision?
Yeah. So, of course, we expect them to do this, and we're okay with the fact that they're going to do some image enhancement, right? Their job is to put their best foot forward. We totally get that. And for me, I think there's a fine line between image enhancement and deception, and the type of the deception that I should be concerned with. Somebody doing one cue in one context can have very different meanings in another context. For example, something that I recently wrote about was the lip pucker, right? Which looks like this, right? So in one context, that could mean I'm ready to kiss my partner, right? But in a slightly more stiff lip pucker, which looks like this, right, could mean that I'm considering what you're saying, right? But because my lips are a little bit tighter, it means I'm not in full agreement with you. Now, especially if that's accompanied with maybe my finger on my lips and looking upwards or looking away, right? So it's kind of like I'm in thought about what you just said. So all I'm trying to demonstrate for you is that don't jump on one cue and say, I got you, you're lying. So we all know that if somebody scratches their nose, that could be a deception cue, right? If somebody pulls their earlobe, if somebody starts to scratch, these are all cues. Or the right, sorry, it could be right or left. If somebody shrugs one side of their shoulder, and it's usually very quick and subtle, right? So it's something like this. That is definitely a red flag to lying. But we want to look for not only the context of it. So context, again, in this scenario would be, I know a guy who does this a lot, and I'm convinced that he had a shoulder injury. So he's doing this all the time. For him, that is baseline, right? It's normal. So I'm not going to see that as a deception cue. So what do we have here? I've touched on a few things. We have context, number one. You have to consider the context. If the guy's a little bit nervous because it's an interview, that's understandable. So there might be a little bit of a scratch on the neck or something like that. Then there's clusters. We want to find a bunch of the red flags together, right? So 3 or 4 red flags that come sort of one after the other or right on top of each other. So that helps you to confirm that it wasn't just idiosyncrasy, but it was truly deception. And then the baseline, right? So we want to see for this particular person, not just for the situation, for this particular person, how does he normally act? So some people express surprise. I mean, they have a surprise punctuator, which is where the eyebrows lift up a lot, right? So so I want to see how the guy is in normal conversation, in my introductory conversation with him, and then see how we go from there. Now, some of the techniques that you can use is, first of all, move out from behind the desk or the table, because you can't see the guy's full body there when he's behind the table. So encourage him, and you should lead by, you move behind the desk, from behind the desk, so that you can see his legs. Because some body language experts, especially Joe Navarro, he's a veteran with the FBI, he says that the feet are the most reliable. And I agree. And the reason why the feet are the most reliable is because it's least in our consciousness. It's what we're not aware of. We don't think about controlling our feet. So what do we want to look at in the feet? We want to look at what direction his feet are pointing at. Okay, if his feet are pointing towards us, it means he's engaged. If he's 1 foot, usually not both, but if 1 foot is pointing towards the door, he probably wants to leave. Okay, our feet give us intention cues, and our feet start to point in the direction we want to go to before we even consciously make that decision.
Very interesting, Anthony. What about, see, recruiters sometimes do phone interviews as well, just to get a sense of how candidates, just to size up the candidates before they actually arrange for an actual meetup face-to-face. So will you have any advice to share to recruiters who are doing phone interviews, and how could they actually pick out, potential red flags from there?
That's a fantastic question, because many recruiters have to do the screening before. And so what can you pick up on? I think one of the easiest things to pick up on the phone is the inflection. So for example, you ask me what salary I'm looking for, and I say $100,000 versus $100,000. $100,000. Notice I'm doing something with my hand, because I want to get that feel for, if I go down at the end of my statement, if I go down, it's very difficult to do this with the camera, but if I go down at the end of the statement, it's authoritative. When I go up, I'm asking a question. So when I'm naturally asking a question, I'll say, how much are you looking for? How much are you looking for? And I'll go up, right? When your candidate answers with an upwards inflection, it means he's not sure. And he's demonstrating a lack of confidence when he says his own name going up at the end. Some of the other things you might want to look for is the how deep his voice is, or her voice is, right? So for sure, woman, think of Margaret Thatcher, right? The Prime Minister of England, decades ago. She had a very low voice. She never used to have a very low voice. Actually, she used to have a more high-pitched voice, and she was trained to lower the pitch, because a lower pitch exudes more authority. A higher pitch is more, you know, when we panic or when we're stressed, our vocal cords constrict and the pitch goes up. So that's what you're communicating then. So listen to your candidate. If maybe in the beginning of his conversation, the tone is lower, right? Like where I am now, this is my natural low tone, natural for me. Now, if during our conversation, when you start to ask the tough questions, I start to get a little bit constrained. I know I'm exaggerating now, but it's very difficult for me to just go in the middle. But if you were just getting me a little bit stressed, it might just go somewhere in the middle there. But so, yeah, so that's one thing. Look for the voice tone changing through the conversation. If you're not sure, by the way, BK, if you're not sure if, if the voice did go from a low to a high, the tone, then you can test it by going back on more relaxed questions. Just sort of bring a level of relaxation back into the conversation, and then go back to the tough questions and then observe what happens. And you can do that with anything, really, with all of the nonverbal cues that we've discussed. If you're not sure what you saw was a red flag, so to speak, then relax a little bit and go back. Yeah.
Fantastic. Oh, well, it's really been an eye-opener and year-opener, in fact, speaking with you, just to talk about deception when it comes to recruitment. And I just want to thank you, so much for taking the time to come on to ATC events, hang out, and speak to us. So thanks.
BK, it's always an absolute pleasure to speak to recruiters. I love talking, unfortunately, sometimes too much, but it's been a pleasure. And I hope that what I've given over will be helpful to your audience.
Definitely is going to be really helpful. Thank you very much, Anthony. I hope to speak to you soon.
Thank you. Let's be in touch.
See ya.
Take care.